So today we have the pleasure of talking about Liberty Science Center, one of our favorite case studies also. So instead of talking about what we did, let's talk about what we achieved. This case has a lot of numbers that we're going to share, and sometimes numbers are in revenue, sometimes it's in new ideas, sometimes new revenues are how you look at things differently and you actually turn them on a dime and shake them up and drive more revenue out of them. I think this is a little bit of a case study of all of that. So what initially happened was the center was looking to have more revenue, much more foot traffic, like all museums and science centers. But they were using four different agencies to do different aspects of their marketing. That's everything from one was doing events and one was doing direct mail, and another was doing some creative, a lot of different things that were happening there. There's some PR. And they were looking at, okay, do we need new thoughts, new thinking, new revenue ideas? And I came in and I pitched to them and the board, spent about 8 weeks coming up with ideas, looking at their things. And we pitched a really big idea about how to influence everything that they were doing in sales and marketing, everything. And they ended up getting rid of those other agencies and just hiring us. And we were lucky to have a residency on site right outside. I remember outside the CEO's office, we had an area for our group. And what we did, the first few months, we analyzed all parts of the museum, literally, as we're going to talk about today, from the maps that they give out when you walk in to what they say when they answer the phone. All of that was on the table. And our goal was to find new money, bring in more foot traffic and much more partners and potentially commercial sponsorships. Why would a nonprofit feel so strongly about new revenue? Why do they need new revenue so much? Well, Liberty Science Center, you might not know, they year after year, they were getting some money from people coming in, patronage, and some from memberships, but also some from the state of New Jersey. And what they wanted to do and why they wanted more money is to develop even better exhibits. And they have some great exhibits to this day, the amazing exhibits. They wanted to create more visitor experiences and types of things that people would not forget. They go there as a kid, or they're brought there with their parents as a kid, and then they bring their kids later on in life. And they also wanted to increase visitors. How many more foot traffic can we get? Not just regular patrons and families, but classes on field trips. And they also wanted to bring in more Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and birthday parties, you name it. How can we get more of that? And then lastly, as important as anything else, it was corporate sponsorships. There was lots of areas and lots of things that could have been sponsored that nobody's ever thought that way before. And with our sales hat on, we're always thinking about how do we use branding and marketing to develop a sponsorship strategy for either partnerships or commercial sponsors. So that was the start of where we were in the beginning. And Lisa's going to talk you through a little bit about what we did.
So we started projects with assessing what we were working with. And in this case, it was changing a mindset of this institution from thinking we're a museum competing with other museums into we are an experience competing with other experiences. So they're really looking for what people are doing with their free time. Are they going to movies? Are they going to sports events? Are they going to parties? Are they going for a walk in the park? This institution is competing for people's free time, whether it's an individual or a group or even a sponsor. There's so many places where people could put their time and their money, and that's where the competition set was. So we started by interviewing people as they were coming in, saying, why did you come today, and what are you expecting? And then we catch them on their way out to get their off-the-cuff, from-the-heart opinions. What was your experience? Did it match what you were expecting? What do you think was good? What do you think was bad? And that way we could understand where the real opportunities were and also areas where we could strengthen what the experience was. The other thing we did in our assessment was look at the physical and digital and print and every place a person touches the brand. So when they're walking into the building, when they're driving up to the parking lot, every surface was an opportunity to present a ever-changing visual experience that helped really engage people, from signage to everything else. And in fact, even one of the first things we did was look at the black and white maps that you would get when you walked into the facility. They were always found in the trash. And it's like, what a missed opportunity. this isn't just about finding bathrooms. This is an invitation into an experience and a way to bring people into the institution and to see what was there and to make the guide part of the exciting experience. So we redesigned it with color. Certainly the maps were there, but also invitations. Have you thought about this? Go visit this. This is something you should see. This is something that you should do. And we found that these maps were no longer in the trash, that they were actually kept as keepsakes so that people could remember their visit. And Larry, in his introduction, talked about revenue. Revenue is so important to an institution like this because it's what powers improving the experience and bringing new things to the visitors. And in this case, we took a cost center, got a sponsor, Bank of America, for it, and turned a cost center into a revenue center. So it was really a very small thing, just the map when you walk in the door, and turned it into something much greater.
This example of a basic black and white visitor map to show you where things are, where exhibits are, it is one of those examples I use a lot and I've used for a while because if you think about it, yes, it was, as you said, went from a cost center to now an opportunity. We ended up with Bank of America's sponsorship of it. We provided something the second you started your experience in that museum, no matter who you are.
Mhm.
We thought of everything. We give you tips and tricks of where to go. We told you clearly where the bathroom was, so we don't have people always asking where the bathroom is. But this was an opportunity to affect experience. So we upped the experience and then we saved money because we had a sponsor. Those two things are the kind of thinking that I think is really important and definitely what Liberty Science Center needed. So let me get into the numbers. I think this
Yeah.
is exciting stuff when you talk about numbers. How did we get double-digit attendance increases at a time when many museums were 20 to 40% off?
Yes.
Visitation was down. People were not going out as much. 15% growth in the first year, about 18% in the second year. So what did we do? What are the things that we did? How did we use branding? How did we use marketing? How did we use sales and new ideas? Part of it was listening to what people were telling us in that assessment, in those interviews, in those intercepts that we got a lot of data. So I'm gonna kind of run through from the top line what some of those successful points were. Many years ago, there was a touch tunnel. People remembered it. They told us, they said, oh, the museum used to have the touch tunnel many years ago. Why didn't you bring that back? I won't get into why that wasn't brought back for a long time, but there was some politics and people that were thinking, oh, it's too fun. Does that represent our mission and all that? But in reality, if your customers are saying that and they wanted it to come back, why don't we rethink it and redevelop it? So we had a strong recommendation that we put forward, which happened to bring back that popular touch tunnel, rebrand it, rebuild the thinking around the exhibit and what the experience would be. The numbers, this led to double-digit attendance increase. In the first 2 months of it back was, I think, 4 times the increase because of the excitement that was built up over the years, but double-digit attendance increase. So that's one thing. Going into another thing, there's a partnership with BASF to form a kids lab that they've been doing at Liberty Science Center for many years. We boosted the marketing of the kids lab, and it remained booked until we left 2 years later. It remained booked nonstop. You couldn't get in there because it was something that the kids wanted to do and something that schools appreciated. Then birthday parties. I mean, it was kind of a cool idea having a birthday party at a museum, right? It's kind of like those movies that we watched and, Night at the Museum and everything. What would a birthday party be like? But believe it or not, they weren't doing as many birthday parties as you would think for a place that's kind of considered retail, but it's like over the top experience. So we started focusing on it, creating ads for it, creating a lot of social media, putting out digital banners. And we ended up creating 2,000 leads for birthday parties, which was a lot. And the birthday party packages started increasing, adding revenue to the bottom line immediately. Within the first 6 months, we had done more birthday parties than we had ever done before. And then event marketing. So very great thing. And I get to the Liberty Science Center. They do this a lot, but they have this 12 Days of Science event that happens around the Christmas time. And we wanted to really push that forward much more. And we increased the event marketing behind it, like we did with other things there, a lot more print ads and digital advertising and social media boosting. And the 12 Days of Science that we had launched in our first year was the most successful visitorship to the museum ever on record since the Science Center has been around. And then the following year, the exact same thing happened. And then we weren't there to see what happened in the third year.
But what's amazing is that biggest month was typically their lowest month because
Correct.
people would be gone for the holidays. So we
Correct.
turned a sink into a
Yeah,
fountain.
you're right.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
Mhm.
So also, one of the things we're going to talk about cost centers again. We're going to talk about how you can cater to make people feel more special. Previously, there was a small field trip and planning guide and educator's guide. There was a bunch of different things you'd send for class trips, which is a big part of who they are, right? You see buses there all the time. When I looked at the educator's guide, they were trying to pack everything in it in a small little brochure. The problem is, as soon as you created it, all the information was outdated.
Right.
What would you do? Reprint all that? There was no budget to keep reprinting. So
Plus, if you try to say everything, you end up saying nothing.
yeah, because you're not targeting it to the audience that you have there. So we redesigned the entire educator's guide, rewrote it, rethought it, redesigned it, new photography, new everything, built in some of that thinking that we had in the map where you talk about the exciting elements and things that you can't miss and map it to the curriculum for what they were teaching. So we redesigned it. We went and bid it out and got it printed 37% cheaper, even though it was modular and we had different inserts for all the different types of things that would relate to a field trip and curriculum. You can pick and pack those and send a custom kit to somebody instead of sending them a booklet that had everything and they kind of felt lost and that you were just sending them the same thing you send everybody else. So 37% cheaper, much more flexible, much more sexy. It's a great document. You get this kit and you're like, wow, this is pretty impressive. This led to a 22% increase immediately when this got out in school field trips and near a 92% repeat attendance going into the second year. Those numbers are very, very large.
Yeah, it costs a certain amount to sell somebody once, but with repeat attendance, you don't have the cost of selling them a second time.
Yeah, when we got to one of the very special groups within their audience was Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. There was a lot of great educational aspects and badges you can learn and things that you can do, and groups were coming there. But the templates and the marketing and the things that you would supply to a Girl Scout or Boy Scout group, they weren't designed in a way where they can then put in their specific custom information. We rethought about the templates. We rethought about the marketing. A lot of energy went into now bringing back a lot of those troops that stopped coming. We saw a 21% bump in attendance across the board of Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts together and other groups, other field trip guides and things that we redesigned also. So that was more about thinking about what that audience needed and designing your materials for them.
So what was interesting is each one of these initiatives had its own success, but they all worked together like drops in a bucket to create a bigger pool. And it ended up, each one of these things helped drive membership growth by 25% in the first year. And it continued to rise throughout the project because each one of these contributed to that.
So what came next? Website. So back a little bit ago, there were lots of websites that were using Flash technology. Flash is now gone for a little while. The website that was in the past for Liberty Science Center was all Flash-based, and we knew that had to go. We built an entire new website, rethought it, redesigned it, content for it, all new photography, to make it much easier for people to, no matter who you are, you'd be able to go there and figure out what you wanted to do for the day and what were the highlights that were happening at any given moment or during a month. The goal was to book tickets easier the second you found something that you liked. So that was one thing. Website was very successful launch. Secondly, we also came up with ideas, new ideas for revenue growth. One of them was Look at Me Photos, basically a green screen technology booth. You'd come there, you'd feel like you're flying through space, and or you'd be an astronaut, or one of their exhibits where you can stand on these girders and feel like you're high up and you're in a city scene. You'd be able to take a picture and put yourself in that background, and that would drive a substantial amount of revenue from photography offering. Turnkey, we came up with the whole concept of what that would be like, how the technology would work, how the e-commerce part would work, and what partners we can have to do that with.
So driving visitors and foot traffic and groups was also important, but another huge part of our work with them was what other revenue can we get from sponsors that could sponsor events, that could sponsor exhibits, but also that would use the facility for events themselves, from launching a product or advertising something. So we created we did the same kind of thing. We went and spoke to sponsors to find out what was driving them, what they were looking for, what they wanted in a venue, what they wanted from, whether it was going for marketing dollars, which is a bigger pool, or whether it was going for donor dollars, if they were looking at sponsoring events in the community or sponsoring organizations in the community. So we took the sponsorship idea and went after both of those budgets with a kit that brought those opportunities alive.
Yeah, I think the backbone of that was there was no stone unturned. We looked at the parking lot. We looked everywhere that there could be a potential space for sponsorship. And how would you not just put a logo there, but something that's important that the sponsor could bring? It could be news, it could be information. We talked about putting logos illuminated on the dome outside, putting up a sign outside with Panasonic that gave you the weather brought to you by Google. What are the things that would add value to the experience, but be brought to you by a donor? And a checklist of what the value of those properties might be. There had never been before a strong sponsor offering and a kit and a price guide to kind of walk people through that and let the corporate team walk a potential sponsor through that. So that was revolutionary.
Right. And going for, instead of just the philanthropy dollars that corporations have, going for the marketing dollars, which are a much bigger pool.
At the end of the day, 2 years work, lots of changes, lots of great things. We provided the organization with the momentum they needed. We gave them the tools, the thinking, the insights to generate more revenue and then continue on and be successful. So that was a really interesting, really good project. It made us feel good because
So rewarding.
we saw what they were bringing to the world. I mean, people talk about Liberty Science Center all over the world, and being able to help them in that way was something that I think we'll never forget. So